Merce Dog, aka Dawson Mercer, had a big showing for the Devils just this past season, and there are still some other components to his game that is heavily underrated. And I got the sound bites and more on today's episode of Locked On Devils. Buckle up, everybody.
You're Locked On Devils, your daily podcast on the New Jersey Devils, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi, this is Bryce Salvador, and you're Locked On Devils with Trey Matthews.
Elliott scores! Oh, Stevens stepped up, nailed him. Brodor's got the puck. What a shot. The Devils win the Stanley Cup.
Alrighty now, what is up, New Jersey? Welcome back to the Locked On Devils podcast here on Locked On Network. I'm your host, college hockey play-by-play announcer, Devils writer for Pucks and Pitchforks, and also part-time credential media member, Trey Matthews. In today's episode, we're going to talk about Dawson Mercer and how he's been an absolute dog for the New Jersey Devils. Now, in an episode last week, I spoke with Gabby Nordstrom of Jersey Sporting News, and she had high praise for Mercer and what he was able to do on the Devils' top six just this past season. So I figured Mercer, given his improvement, given his potential, and given my expectations for him moving forward, I felt as though Mercer deserved his own centric episode. So that's what we're going to talk about in today's show. So in the first segment, I'm going to give you guys some backstory in regards to his very good season. Then the second segment, we'll talk about some improvement that I would like to see made on his behalf. And then in the third and final segment, I'll talk about my expectations for him moving forward. And like always, I have some sound bites to share with you guys when I had the chance to speak with Mercer a few months back. So if I had to describe Mercer's season, I think the word that comes to mind is change. And not just because he changed his jersey number from 18 to 91 in favor of Andre Palat. No, because throughout the course of the season, I saw Mercer just grow from being a solid asset on the Devils roster to now being a foundational piece for their top six. Because when we talk about the Devils as top six and how lethal it could potentially be, Mercer's name is brought into that conversation. So before I talk about his stats from just this past year, let's look at his rookie season because he appeared in 82 games, which we'll talk about his durability more in the second segment of today's episode. But he appeared in all 82 games. He had 17 goals, 25 assists for a grand total of 42 points. So if I remember Mercer's rookie year from the top of my head, I'd say it was a solid year for him. He didn't really light the league on fire. He got off to a really good start, but similar to a lot of his teammates, as the year progressed, his impact just went a little bit more silent because I remember at the beginning of the year when Mercer was putting up those types of numbers, I was actually making a case for him as to why he should potentially have his name in the running for the Calder Memorial Trophy, but we had some problems with the Detroit Red Wings, or in fact, two problems because you had Mo Seider and also Lucas Raymond who were competing for the Calder. So the chances of Mercer actually winning it were slim to none, but still, it doesn't take away from the fact that Mercer got off to a good start, but he didn't really finish the season on a strong note based on my memory. But the one thing I could say going into last year's offseason was that I thought Mercer had a lot of potential. I thought he was going to be a solid asset on the Devils roster because one of the X factors I said throughout the course of that offseason was that if Mercer is able to just put up some solid offensive contributions, it just gives the Devils more options up and down their lineup. But once again, he transformed himself. He changed. He grew from solid asset to foundational piece. Now, what was the turning point? Well, if you guys recall, for the first few months of the season, Lindy Ruff was utilizing Dawson Mercer on the bottom six. And there was actually a push on Twitter for Mercer to be brought up to the top six and be paired alongside like Jack Hughes or Nico Hischier because a lot of Devils fans saw the potential in Mercer, but unfortunately, he wasn't really given a fair chance. So Lindy Ruff, I guess bullying does work in a sense because come January 10th against the Carolina Hurricanes, Mercer had his breakout game because he had a 3-point performance in which he was able to score 2 goals and 1 assist. And then from there on out, Mercer's role increased. So from February 16th to March 3rd, Mercer had an 8-game goal streak, and it didn't stop there. Shortly after that streak ended, he was still continuing to streak for points because he had a 12-game point streak from February 16th to March 11th. So Mercer was just taking leaps and bounds of improvement once again, and the final stats show it because he finished 4th on the team in goals with 27. He finished 5th on the team in assists with 29. He was also 5th on the team in points with 56. And believe it or not, he was 5th on the team in face-off win percentage with 42.4%. And he was 7th on the team in point share with a rating of 6.4. So I had the chance to ask Mercer, like, how did he gauge his success from having somewhat of a smaller role compared to the end of the year where he was one of the go-to guys for the Devils because it leaked over from the regular season into the playoffs? Here's what he told me.
It seemed like at the beginning of the year, your role compared to now was a lot smaller. So what did it mean to be entrusted to finally get that larger role and then start to see the success come on in?
Yeah, I just want to, be the best player I can every night when I go out there, and every night I give my all, and then, when it started going, good and in your way, you want to make sure you grab hold of that and use that opportunity, and I think I really did that, and I've always said I want to be a big part of this team and group, and I'm pleased with how I ended my season.
Now, this is just speculation, but what I saw from Mercer was that I think his confidence started to just grow a little bit more because once he was establishing himself as a good player on this roster, we just saw him, Nico Hischier, and Tomas Tatar go on an absolute tear during the month of January and February. And when you have someone like Nico Hischier, who's the leader of this team, who is unselfish, willing to pass you the puck and set you up on a dime, your confidence just grows in more ways than one. Hell, if I was lacing up the skates and if I was paired alongside Nico Hischier, I could be the worst NHL player out there, but I am confident that Hischier is going to help me in more ways than one. I know I'm buttering it up a little bit, but digressing a little bit because this is about Mercer. Mercer, just his confidence grew a little bit more, and I think the Devils discourse really started to see how dangerous he can be. So when reflecting on this past season, I think the biggest what if for Dawson was that what if he was on the top 6 to begin the year? What if he wasn't on that 3rd or 4th line and his minutes was going up a little bit more at that time? Like, what would have happened had Lindy Ruff made that adjustment sooner rather than later? Luckily, he was able to catch it in January, but like I said, but still, you just wonder how many more points, how much more productive games could Mercer have if he was paired alongside Jack Hughes and Nico Hischier a little earlier in the season. And we're going to see that what if take place going into next year, more likely than not, because according to Daily Faceoff, they are predicting for Dawson Mercer to be on the top line with Nico Hischier and Timo Meier. Like I've said in prior episodes, I think you have to flip Jesper Bratt and Timo Meier. So Bratt be on the top line and Meier be paired alongside Jack Hughes because I like that sort of dynamic. But digressing a little bit, Mercer's role is going to continue to thrive and grow going into the new year. And this is his chance to really put a lot of teams on notice because I think people still view Mercer as sort of an X-factor player. But I think Devils fans, Devils media, whatever the case might be, I think we're all seeing that Mercer is budding into that capable all-star type of player. So we're going to talk more about Mercer and what improvements he can make to his overall game momentarily. But before we continue, let me tell you guys about Bird Dogs. So Bird Dogs make you look good. Bird Dogs stretch khaki shorts are designed to fit slimmer through the thigh and leg, giving you a truly sculpted look. Bird Dog shorts do the exact same thing as Lululemon, but fit way better. They fit way better than regular shorts that are made of stiff, restricting cotton. Bird Dogs fix this issue by inventing cloud knit fabric that looks just like khakis, but stretches so you can get a way slimmer fit without having to sacrifice movement. Bird Dogs uses anti-stink sweat wicking fabric that keeps you cool and dry all day long. So I live in Arizona for a time being. It's like 100 plus degrees. So I want to look good, but at the same time, I need my body to breathe a little bit. So I use Bird Dog shorts. I love them. So you will too. Go to birddogs.com/LockedOnNHL or enter promo code LockedOnNHL for a free white tech hat with your order. That's birddogs.com/LockedOnNHL or promo code LockedOnNHL for a free white tech hat. You won't want to take off your Bird Dogs. I promise you. Okay, let's shift the talking point from good to now things that Mercer needs to improve on, at least on my end. And don't worry, we'll shift back to more good that he's done with the Devils. But when asked this question a few months back, here's what Mercer says he wants to improve to his overall game. Check it out.
Sorry. I think just overall, the game is so fast. I just want to make sure I keep on getting quick, making those decisions, improving on my shot again. I want to score goals, put the puck in the net, and I just want to make sure I keep working on that aspect because, it's a big part of my game, and I want to make sure I definitely take advantage of the off season.
Okay, so if I had to give my 2-cent opinion as to what Mercer needs to improve on, at least on my end, and this might be stretching it a bit, but I just had to put something down. I would say it's being adaptable. But here's the thing. I just want to make something perfectly clear. I'm not saying that Mercer is not adaptable because, remember, he's a center at heart and he moved over to a winger position in order to help the Devils thrive a little bit more. But I'm just talking about who he's paired alongside with. I just want to make that perfectly clear. But this might be a bad example, so bear with me. But when looking at someone like Yegor Sharangovich, when he was paired alongside Jack Hughes his first year in league, we saw Sharangovich have a very productive year with the Devils. But when you remove Jack Hughes from the equation, Jack Hughes is able to thrive without Sharangovich, but not the other way around. Or we see Michael McLeod, he's able to thrive with Nathan Bastian, but Nathan Bastian can thrive without Michael McLeod, and the numbers show it. So the same can be said for Dawson Mercer, which is I'm glad he was able to find his footing. I'm glad he was able to be assigned to a line that suits him like a glove. But my thing is, if Mercer really wants to be a good player, you got to make the most out of any circumstance you are in. So look at someone like Timo Meier. Here's another example. Meier, at some point during the year, while wearing a Devils sweater, he was put on the third line. And that's not to say that Meier was a bad player or that he's going to get the second least amount of ice time, but it was just to spread out the options a little bit more. So the offense for Meier, sometimes it was there, sometimes it wasn't. But I think the main thing that Meier was able to do was he adapted to the circumstance. He adapted to his new environment, which was he saw that the Devils needed more power forward type of production. So what's he doing? He's playing in front of net. He's being physical. He's getting those hits. He's creating shots for not only himself, but others. So I want to see the same thing from Dawson Mercer, because what if, God forbid, Nico Hischier can't play for a few games? So what do you do now? Well, I guess Lindy Ruff will put him next to Jack Hughes. But still, the point I'm trying to make is that for Mercer, I get that your role was pretty small in the first half of the year compared to the second half. But at the same time, it's just if you're a very great player, then you have to adapt to it. You have to be able to say, you know what, I can make the most out of this. I think a good example of a player who is able to switch positions and also switch line mates and not skip a beat and still play effective minutes on the ice is Erik Haula, because there have been a couple times this year where Haula was paired alongside Hughes, or maybe he was commanding his own line on the bottom six, but yet Haula, once again, his impact was felt greatly throughout the entire Devils roster, and people started to see it in full swing towards the end of the year. So I think Erik Haula is a good role model for Mercer to follow in the footsteps in. Obviously, Mercer is more of an offensive dynamic player, but I think Erik Haula, given his veteran leadership, and once again, the fact that Haula can play on the bottom six, the top six, can play winger or center, and still have a great impact on the Devils roster, I think Mercer can take a thing or two out of his playbook. And let me make something perfectly clear. I'm not saying that Mercer was horrendous or anything. In fact, I still said at the first half of the year that Mercer was still a solid contributor. But at the end of the year, he went from solid contributor to now being one of the main reasons why the Devils' top six is going to be so lethal this season. So I project for Mercer to have an even bigger role going into next year. And I think a lot of Devils fans have high hopes for him. But that's the one of the things that I want Mercer to work on, which is just be a little bit more adaptable. But I think what trumps it all is his power play production. So once again, according to Daily Faceoff, they are projecting for Dawson Mercer to play on the second power play unit alongside Tyler Toffoli, Luke Hughes, Andre Palat, and Alexander Holtz, which I'm sure we'll talk more about that when the season is drawing closer. But for the time being, let's just pretend this is going to be the second power play unit for the Devils. So I already have high hopes for Tyler Toffoli. And we know that Luke Hughes' offense is the name of the game for him, even though he's a defenseman. Andre Palat, sometimes it's there, sometimes it's not. Alexander Holtz, keeping my expectations moderate. So in my opinion, I think Dawson Mercer is the second go-to option on the second power play unit for the Devils in this hypothetical scenario, because obviously the Devils are going to lean on Tyler Toffoli because if I said it once, I've said it 1,000 times, and it's definitely something I'm going to talk about in a near future episode. But the Devils have way too much talent on this roster to be a mediocre power play team. So when you have someone like Toffoli now added, Toffoli can help spread it out a little bit more, because the top power play unit for the Devils is stacked. You got Timo, Nico Hischier, Jesper Bratt, Dougie, and also Hughes. So the first power play unit, I have some high expectations for, but I think the name of the game for the Devils is that when that first power play unit is off, can that second power play unit carry the load just a little bit more? Because when looking at who's ahead of Mercer in power play goals, you see it's Jack Hughes, Dougie Hamilton, Jesper Bratt, Nico Hischier, Timo Meier, all on the first power play unit. Then for power play assists, same story. Hughes, Hamilton, Bratt, and Hischier are ahead of them, which means that Mercer should be the go-to guy on the second power play unit alongside with Tyler Toffoli. So that's my thing for Mercer, which is he is going to be another X-Factor player on the man advantage for the Devils. And once again, this is something I'm going to talk about before the start of the season, which is I want the Devils to finish anywhere from 5 to 10 in the NHL in power play success rate, because when you have all those players, you definitely are a scary unit and you just have to utilize it correctly. So that's my thoughts in regards to Mercer and what he can do a little bit more of. So I think if I had to pick adaptability or power play, I'm going to lean towards power play just a little bit more, because I think that's what I noticed from a bird's eye perspective, which is I want Mercer alongside Toffoli to really lead that second power play unit for the Devils, so that way they can become that top 5 power play unit in the entire NHL. Okay, let's switch the subject back to some good for Mercer. So one of the things that I feel like a lot of people don't really talk about is his durability. So Mercer was one of 4 players on the Devils roster to play in all 82 games. It was him, Jesper Bratt, Dougie Hamilton, and Tomas Tatar. And not only that, Mercer did that last year as well. So he has never missed a game, and he has never been a healthy scratch. He's never been injured. So I think Mercer and his durability is something that we really need to take more focus in, because the fact that Mercer is putting up some very good productive numbers and he's playing in all these games and he's showing no signs of fatigue, I think it really says a lot about what Mercer's been able to do, because factor in playoffs, factor in training camp, factor in rookie camp, whatever the case might be, because Mercer has added a lot of mileage onto his body already, and he has never sat out a game ever while playing for the Devils. That's really impressive. And I think another thing that we need to highlight for Mercer is that his defense is somewhat underrated, because can you guess which Devils player led the forwards in blocks? No, it's not Nico Hischier. That's a great guess. It was Dawson Mercer with 63. There have also been a couple examples, whether it had been his rookie year or his sophomore year, where I've been really impressed with Dawson Mercer's contributions on the penalty kill, and the fact that he's contributing to one of the best penalty kills in the entire NHL. I think it really shows how far he has come as a player, because once again, he was playing big minutes on the PK his rookie year, and that carried over into year number 2. When Mercer was asked about like his production and how surprised was he with his overall development, here's what he told us a good while back.
Did you surprise yourself at all with some of the success you had individually?
Personally, me?
Yeah.
No, I prepared, summer, and I wanted to make sure I elevated my game from last season. And I think a big thing is just, having that confidence and believing in yourself. And I just wanted to make sure that I came back and had a better season. And, I felt I did that, and I was very pleased with it. But, I want to have another good season, off season, and come back even stronger again.
My expectations for Mercer is that when we look back at the 2020 draft class, it's just kind of amazing that he fell a lot of spots down to the Devils, because when we look at the first round selections for the Devils in that year's draft, it was Alexander Holtz, it was himself, and also Shakir Mukhamadullin. So we're talking about Alexander Holtz basically being on his last lifeline, or now Shakir Mukhamadullin is playing with the San Jose Sharks organization. So the fact that Mercer has really blossomed into this solid contributor, I think a lot of Devils fans should be excited for the future, because once again, the reason why people get so excited for the Devils top 6 is because of Mercer and what he was able to do last season. So once again, I just saw his confidence grow. I think it's going to continue to grow. I think he's going to take his games to new heights. You can't go wrong with adding more veteran pieces like Tyler Toffoli, who's been in that circumstance before. And once again, whether it's even strength or on the power play, I think Mercer and his skating ability, I think he just fits the Devils system perfectly. And I think it's one of the reasons why, out of all the first round selections back in 2020, why he has thrived the most. So my expectations for Mercer going forward, he is definitely an X Factor player, but he definitely has some all-star capabilities. But it will be a long shot for him to go to the all-star game, because we're seeing like Jesper Bratt struggling to get there. But he's showing glimpses of it, and he's well on way to do so. And he's still very young. He's only 21 years of age. And remember, Mercer is a center at heart. And the fact that he's been able to adjust to a winger position, I think it's actually quite impressive. And I'm proud of his overall development. So let me know what you guys think about Dawson and his development. What are your expectations for him? And how excited are you for this top 6 unit going into the new season for the Devils? Curious to hear your guys' thoughts. So if you're watching on YouTube, leave a comment down below. If you're listening on a podcast streaming service, hit me up on my personal Twitter page at TreyMatt4 or the show's Twitter page at Locked On Devils. As for today's episode, that's all the time I have for you. So continue to stay safe. Have a wonderful day, New Jersey. Go Devils. I'll catch you guys in the next episode. Thanks for listening once again.